call yourself a free spirit, a wild thing. And you're terrified somebody's gonna stick you in a cage. Maybe you're already in that cage. You built it yourself.
So right now I'm 25 years old. So that means that I've had dreads for 44% or basically half my life. And that boggles my mind. So to put this in perspective, my sister's known me with dreads for longer than she has.
So you're taking them out and then you're taking them all out and then getting it cut?
Yeah, so like I'm like kind of just like going through and I'm just like kind of untangling them. And then I'm gonna have like long hair and I'm just gonna go into the barber shop like, yo. I almost made it to the point where if I waited till next year, I would have them longer than I didn't. I think it's just time.
This is so funny. You gotta having a funeral service for his hair.
Any last words?
It's so weird.
So when I made the decision to cut them, it kind of came to some people as a surprise. So how did I get here? And to tell this story, I want to go all the way back. So in 1994, I was born a baby. And just to brush over a lot of this stuff, I was always into sports, more specifically hockey. I got into hockey at a really early age, and I was always into art and drawing and Disney and movies and stuff like that. So growing up, I went to a private school and they had a dress code where I had to keep my hair off my ears, like above my eyebrows, and then we had a uniform and it drove me insane. Not so much when I was younger, but by the time I hit around 6th grade or so, me and a few of my friends, we really just hated it. We were always pushing the limits with like growing our hair out and stuff and then always getting in trouble for it. So then towards the end of 2006, to start the new school year in 7th grade, I switched schools. And for the first time, I was able to get the hair that I like always wanted. So I had this Bieber-y looking hair and it was great. At the time, I loved it, and I did that for like a year and a half, and after that, I don't know, it was just kind of like, for me, I guess I just was bored with it, and I was like, I want to do something different. I want to do something kind of crazy. And I always liked the way that dreads looked. I always thought they were like awesome. I don't know what it was, I just thought it was cool. So towards the end of 8th grade, my mom, my aunt, and my grandma sat down in our kitchen at my parents' place, and they gave me dreads. And bless their hearts, they did their best, but they looked really, really bad. They looked pretty terrible, and I was coming from like hair that I really liked and like my family liked, and it was just, so it was kind of an extreme jump. But I roughed it out for like 6 months to a year, and then they kind of started, at least I think, started turning around and actually looking like real dreads. They were also short, like they were like 6 inches, the longest at this point, like when I first got them. So it wasn't really that great of a look, and that's fine. But I kept them all throughout high school, and like for me, it's kind of crazy because I think in 8th grade, that's sort of the point when you start to meet people who might be around in your life for a long time. For instance, that's when I met my wife and my wife's family, and all of them. They all know me only with dreads, which is crazy because I had a whole life previous to this where they had no idea what was going on. And like I said, like I was always really into hockey, so I played travel hockey, and I thought that that's actually the path that I was gonna go on. So like all of my like hockey friends and everything knew me as pre-dread Tyler. I like to call it the pre-dread era. But anyways, getting back to it. So I had dreads all through high school. In 2012, I graduated high school, and at this point, I think people had already come around to it since it's been like 4 or 5 years. So I was at a fork in the road where I was either going to go to school or I was going to try to make a run at hockey. But then the alternative was I was going to go to school for animation, which is like Disney, the other half of my life, like the art half and then the hockey half. Because I've always found animation just fascinating. Animation, visual effects, all that stuff. It was probably around this time though, I guess specifically with hockey, that my hair was more than just a hairstyle. My hair got me noticed, and it's still getting me noticed. You're watching this video right now because of my dreads. So I decided going the art route with school. So for the first 2 years, the plan was there's a school in San Francisco that I was going to, but I was taking online courses, and then I was planning on moving out there 2 years in after I've like kind of got like the basic classes out of the way. So the first 2 years was kind of weird because everybody went off to college and I was just chilling at home working on kind of like my own stuff. I don't really know, actually, I didn't know anybody who was doing what I was doing, so it was kind of isolating, I guess. But I guess that was fine because looking back, I think it's probably because of the hairstyle that I chose back in middle school where it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like a weird, similar feeling. I feel like it was like preparing me for that moment. I don't know. I romanticize like everything, so take it with a grain of salt. So at the time I was, like I said, I was living at home and I was really into graffiti ever since like, I was younger too, forgot about that. I was into graffiti up until this point. So I remember the first few things that I did, like were out in public, and I remember some people from school that I knew like were posting pictures of it, but nobody knew who did it, and were like, oh, like look at this. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that people are noticing my art and stuff. So I did that for a little bit, and then I found out that if I continued on that path, I was gonna lose my student loans and I was gonna have to drop school, and that was kind of something that I was like, oh, it's not worth it to do that. So instead of doing graffiti like out, I was like, I really like making videos. So I started posting them to YouTube. I remember back in like 2005, 2006, back when there was like a Bombs World. Bombs World was like the best thing ever. I knew about that before YouTube, but then YouTube came around, and then there were people like consistently making videos. It wasn't just random internet videos. And the people that I remember starting out like watching, like that I ever saw doing this, was a guy whose name was Shay Carl, and he just filmed his family, and he was like just like this regular dude like doing his thing, but he was making videos every day, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then I found a guy, his name was Charles Trippy, and I was like, oh, he's doing the same thing. And then I found other people like Shane Dawson, Jack's Gap was awesome, I really liked him. And then later on, Fun for Louie, which is funny, he had dreads too. So all these people like I watched, it was like a new wave like of something that was just nuts. So I had the thought, I was like, hey, like what if I made a video of me just like painting a thing for this guy who I watch on YouTube, like because people know that guy too, so people might like it. So I did that, and that was like the first thing that actually kind of like took off and people saw it, and then kind of just grew from there. And then long story short, I got in contact with like Shay, this guy who I was watching on YouTube, and he was like, hey. So from there it kind of just snowballed, and I made a piece like for a baseball player in Cincinnati that was kind of like a big like local thing, and then it was kind of sweet. Like I went in on a radio station, talked, it was pretty crazy. And that's like when things like started to click, and I was like 18 years old, and I was making like money for the first time out of nothing, just making art and like doing things. Like I painted some murals and stuff, and I was like, wow, this is crazy that I could quit my job at a pizza kitchen and I could just do art and stuff. So I was like, that's pretty awesome. So a little bit of time passed, I think, and then Shay, that guy who I watched on YouTube, hit me up and was like, hey dude, would you want to like come out and like maybe like, I guess it started out like, would you want to paint something out in Utah at our offices for his clothing company that he was starting? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So like I remember he called me or whatever, and it was like maybe like a few days later I was on a flight like going out. Like it was pretty quick. I was just like, screw it. So I just bought a plane ticket and I was like, all right, let's do it. I went out there for a week, and I actually stayed with a really good friend of mine who was also out there like doing the same thing. And it was just like, we spent a week and we just like worked on this thing, and I ended up not painting anything, but like rather like actually like working on the company with them. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I was like, man, maybe I kind of know a little bit about this stuff. And I think originally it gelled pretty well. So we went out there. Then before I knew it, I was working like with these guys at this clothing company, like just pretty much doing, like we were all doing everything. Everybody was wearing multiple hats. So it is safe to say that up to this point, this was the best point in my life. It was probably between 2015 and 2017. These people like that I met out there were like my absolute best friends. Like everybody actually felt like a family, which was really crazy. And I don't know that I've ever been that close with a whole lot of people. But with those guys, I don't know what it was. But I was very close with like everybody who I was like working with on a daily basis, and it was amazing. Me and my wife had just gotten married in 2016, and things were like looking up. We went to Disney World for a honeymoon, which is insane. It was awesome. So I got married with dreads. That's kind of crazy, I guess. Lucky for me, she didn't make me cut them. But after the wedding, I think things with the company were kind of like, I kind of turned in, my heart was in a good place, but I think I probably turned into an asshole. But I was like just trying to hang on to it because I saw this thing that I love so much like starting to slip away, and yeah, I don't know. But ultimately I learned a lot. So I remember we were home for Thanksgiving in 2016. In 2016, yeah. And then I ended up walking away from the company while we were still home, but we lived in Salt Lake at the time. So actually, it was the day before our flight back. So we were flying back to Salt Lake, well, essentially jobless, but I was just very, very frustrated with like how things were. We were flying back, and I didn't have like a a job or anything, so we were kind of just like, damn. But we've always had this drive to just kind of like make things work. Really, failure's not really an option. So as soon as we land, like the first thing that we do is we just go to a bookstore and we're like, well, we have to figure out how to do this for ourselves, because like with the company, I knew how to do a lot of stuff, and I learned how to do a lot of stuff over like the 3 years that I was there, 2 years, whatever it was. And I knew that I could do the same thing just for other companies. So yeah, as soon as we get off the flight, we just went to a bookstore and got a bunch of books on like how to do that. Like we didn't know. So me and my wife, like we just kind of like tag teamed it. And lucky for us, like we just kind of busted our butts and many sleepless nights, and we started to kind of gain a client base. We started to grow, and we started to get these like bigger clients that would lead to bigger clients, and then we were building a portfolio of all this work that we were shooting, and now it's our 100% full-time thing. I was posting things to our website, like our commercial work. People were seeing that, but then other people were seeing it, and I was selling like presets, like photo presets and video presets that make your videos look cool. It just adds like my colors to them, essentially. People liked it, so that was like another form of a way we were making money too. So we were kind of like figuring out ways to maximize our revenue accidentally. Like we knew the general direction of where we were headed, but like we were like kind of like learning things, like bumping into walls as we were going. So 2017 rolls around, and then in May we moved back home to Cincinnati, and things were great. We were really excited to be back and everything for like the first like few months. But then after a while, like we realized like what we're doing, like we could live anywhere in the world right now. And we chose to move back home to Cincinnati. And a lot of it had to do with the weather, because I mean, the last couple of years it's been like really gray and rainy. So I don't know, I just started to feel like kind of like, once again, a little bit isolated. I think we were both like kind of like just feeling like, I don't know. And then we've had some friends who we used to like talk to and stuff that, I don't know, I guess just people get older, but there's things kind of got weird, and everybody, ourselves included, just like act different. So it was a weird, different dynamic. We really weren't happy, and we weren't working with people who were like doing anything that we were doing. So we were even more on an island. So we were like, why are we living here? And at this point, I actually even lost touch with YouTube like 100%, and I think there was a stint where like 3 months I didn't even make a YouTube video, because like I didn't really care, because what we were doing, we were running our projects. I think the level of intensity that I was like putting into like my client work was so great, and I expected like that same level out of videos on YouTube, where I was like just kind of filming anything and everything when I was younger. It kind of just fell away, I guess, for a little bit. So I don't know what it was, but that part made me kind of sad too, because I was like, honestly, I truly enjoyed like what YouTube was for us at the very, very beginning. And we saw, you know, I mean, we didn't see like any like major success or anything, but we saw a little bit of success, and it was cool. I mean, it was able to like leverage ourselves into real working jobs, which is all I really wanted out of the whole thing. But there was actually a couple of instances specifically with a couple friends of mine, like on 2 separate occasions, where I realized they had no idea anything about me, nothing at all. And these were like almost like lifelong friends, like the friends of the better part of my life. They had no idea anything really about me up to this point. Like they knew like, I guess, a past version, but nobody really ever like bothered to ask or anything, or I don't know, it was weird. Maybe I was just sulking, like I said. And I was like, these people, like these guys have an idea of who I am based off of what they've seen on my YouTube channel. I don't know, that part really made me sad. Pretty bad. And it was almost like everybody in my life up to this point only like connects with what we're actually doing with what's going on when we upload to freaking YouTube. It's just been I don't know, it's just been weird. So since then, I've kind of just had this thought of like being more grown up, like having a more grown up outlook on things, and not caring so much about like pleasing other people, I guess, or keeping up with like what people think of us. So with that said, since we felt that way, we were like, screw it. Why are we living in Cincinnati? Let's move to Hawaii. We'll hang up YouTube. We'll stop doing all that stuff altogether. We'll just continue doing what we're doing. My wife just became a registered dietitian, so she's doing her own practice. We were like, let's just go to Hawaii. Let's just live there and do that. So we made this decision, and we were pretty much set on this for a year. And the time was like coming around, and then we were kind of thinking like on our YouTube videos and stuff, you know what, like some of the most success that we have had in some of our YouTube stuff was like our art and our Disney related stuff. And we love Disney. Like I said, ever since from a young age, we've been pretty big Disney fans. But it's something that both me and my wife like really like. So we were like, well, what if we do this little curveball? what if we moved to Orlando and then made like specifically Disney videos? We don't even talk about ourselves because I don't really like doing that so much anymore because I don't like the way that it gives off that vibe, but I still love YouTube. So we're in this weird spot. It's like, what if we move to Orlando just for a little bit and we see how that is before we, you know, hang things up for good. And Haley, my wife, she was 100% on board, and she's like, yeah, she's like, that would be incredible, especially because she wants to help kids with eating disorders and things like that. So Florida, Orlando, like closer to Disney was just a perfect fit for us at this point in our lives. So we were like, let's do it. So it was really kind of crazy. I think it was only like 3 weeks or something before we were about to move to Hawaii. We were like, oh, now we're actually just gonna move to Orlando for a little bit and then we'll see what happens. So now we're here. Now we're in Orlando. Weird how life works. So we still run the same business with commercial photography, like working these projects and stuff. I feel like we really rounded a corner. And I've been thinking of cutting my dreads for, I don't know what it's been. Probably like at least 6 months, but I haven't really like told anybody about it. I was just like kind of over them. Right now we're 25 years old and I feel like we're planting a foot and we're pivoting. I feel like at this point we've had enough ups and downs in life that have made us a lot more well-rounded and can see things a little bit clearer, I guess, now. And we're excited as hell, and I just wanted a new look. For the last 11 years, it's been a huge learning experience and a learning curve. And I feel like it was perfect to have dreads through that because it taught me so much more than just like having a hairstyle. It really like encapsulated that naivety. Is that it? Naivete? Being naive and trial and error. And it was a risk that not really many people were willing to take. And that wasn't just with like a style, but it showed me to do that with life. For me, it's more of a drastic look than just like a typical hairstyle, I think. And the way that you look and the way that people perceive you, definitely it has an effect on who you are and who you become as a person. It's been a really weird thing to see because now that I'm back to just looking like a normal dude, I'm kind of just, I feel like I'm dropped into an adulthood out of nowhere and kind of just able to go on from here. So I don't know, it's weird. So there's definitely a lesson in this, even for people who don't have dreads, because there's only really a few people in your entire life who's gonna know the real you, whatever's actually inside. Everybody's gonna go through changes, but this change is just a little bit more drastic. For most people, it happens over time. You don't really realize it. So I'm actually very grateful that I'm able to cut my hair and have this feeling.